Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever part of the world you're in. This week, we're going to be having a Q&A session with one of the Shimano technicians on everything surrounding the EP8 motor. Shimano EP8 was launched a while ago on a whole range of bikes from Canyon, Commensal, Mondraker, Ghost, Orange, and as we saw last week, the new Vitus Summit bike. Now, the big question that many of you are asking is when are these bikes available? And as we've seen, on some of them, they're actually available right now. So in a minute, Pete is going to be joining us to answer some of the wider questions surrounding the drive unit and the app. But first of all, one question for me, and that revolves around the issue, which many people have made out, around the slight rattle on the motor. Is there a vaccine available for it? Well, what I do know is Shimano are constantly working on updating their motors and batteries and displays. But for me, I think in the real world, I've actually tuned it out. And obviously on the flat and on climbs where the motor's engaged, it makes no noise at all. And I would argue that if you're going to be involved in routes and rocks and descents, then I'd say your attention is probably best spent elsewhere. Anyway, over to Pete now to go through some questions. Hey, so look, first of all, let's talk about the new app which is available. This is a significant update to the old one, right?
Yeah, the new app is retaining all the functionality of the old app. So the same adjustability that you've had from the E8000, E7000, E6100 series, all of that functionality still remains, but the big significant difference with the EP8 system is that you get increased customization in all three of the modes on the assistance levels.
So Peter, tell us what the three main features are on the new app.
So the assistance character is similar to what you would have had on the older E8000 system. So that is the overall performance of that mode, so whether it be eco, trail or boost. The maximum torque though is you can limit the maximum torque that the motor's delivering to make that assistance character more usable, so you're not having to think about how the power's being delivered necessarily. So it helps a rider who's trying to get to grips with the engine, or if you're working in difficult conditions, when it's muddy and slippery, you might want to tone it down so that it makes it easier to gain the grip. Assistance timing is also how quickly that assistance comes in relation to you putting power down through the crank arm. So how quickly the torque sensor responds, how quickly the motor engages and assists you into the obstacles you're trying to clear, for example.
But more than the adjustability within the modes, you can actually set some profiles. When would you actually do that?
So if you want to customize within the app the modes as we've talked about, you can also save those as two separate profiles that you can have on the bike that you can switch between. So you don't have to necessarily open your phone mid-ride and change these settings mid-ride. You can go and do that on the bike and move between the two profiles. So you could, for example, have one set up for like an adventurous all-day setting where you're trying to get maximum range and usability to go on a big, wide-ranging ride. Or you could have another setting that is more maximum power orientated for doing, for example, your local wood loop that that you're not worried about, conserving the battery on, for example.
Boom. I'm going to go straight into now, can the app be used for E8000?
So the app still works for the older DUs, so E8000, E7000, but unfortunately this new customization and this new usability and features within the app is only available on the EP8 system. Right.
And I guess what you said to me earlier is that actually one of the upgrades to the new app is that there's more error codes available. Is that on the motor or is that on the app? It's on the motor, right? So talk us through then the update in the detail of error codes.
So within the app now as well, so something that's been added with the addition of EP8 is that there's now a functionality for the error codes that have been logged by the system to be displayed within the app. So you can look into a bit more detail if you have had a problem, what it might be. It may not necessarily help you resolve it, but certainly, the dealer that you're going to be using to sort the problem out will have a lot more information.
So can you still customize your cockpit with the EP8 and, are there still all the switches, displays and the dongle available?
So within the app, the customization of all the switches, the display is all still customizable in exactly the same way as the older systems. You can also still use, for example, a third-party display with the new system using a Bluetooth or ANT Plus connection. That functionality all remains with the new EP8.
Pete, the big question, which many people are asking, is can you bolt an EP8 into an old E8000 chassis?
The short answer really is no, unfortunately. The bolt pattern that the new EP8 motor has is the same, so the spacing and the position of the bolting is the same, but the position of some of the other the features of the drive unit aren't the same as an E8000 engine. So where the frame set that you'll have had an E8000 engine bolted into, where the cable routing goes, where the actual covers for the engine go, and the position those are on that bike may not be able to accommodate the EP8 engine. The actual cables themselves have changed, so it's not a simple case of just unplugging and replugging the new ones in. The biggest problem though, unfortunately, is the actual settings on the DU being very different manufacturer to manufacturer. So that presents a huge challenge for, from that perspective. And not only that, manufacturers have to ensure that their bike with the configuration of components that they've put on it will meet what is called EMC testing, which stops or ensures that the bike isn't going to interfere with other electronic devices, you know, funny as it sounds, things like pacemakers and other things like that. So they can't guarantee that.
One of the key points is that you can't actually go buy these motors.
You can't buy a motor over the counter, no. We obviously support the product into the long term, so manufacturers that are still producing E8000 engines in bikes, we're not just going to stop making those motors and warranty will be fulfilled. Customers don't need to worry that they're not going to be able to get a replacement part for the bike that they've already invested in. So as Steve discussed at the start of the video, some people have mentioned that the EP8 motor does have an audible sort of perceived rattling noise. The critical part here is that that's only when the motor is not engaged. So when you're coasting and then there's no load going to the rear wheel and the motor's not engaged is when this noise is occurring. It's not in any way a performance or like structural defect in the drive unit. It's there because the design drivers that the engine has been built around is to make it as lightweight and high performance as possible. So to achieve the low drag and the high performance in the new motor, the resulting noise when the motor's not engaged is audible, but all systems, all bikes have their characteristic traits, and Shimano have taken this feedback on board, and into the future they're looking to make improvements.
Yeah, some really interesting insight there from Peter Shimano, particularly on the retrofitting an E8000 into an EP8 chassis. Or was that an EP8 into an E8000 chassis? I think the main thing from EP8 for me is actually the customization of the motor, the torque setting, the startup setting on hill climbs. I really think it's useful when you get into like the winter months, finding a fine tune of that motor which suits the type of riding that you're doing. Plus, of course, the custom settings we can do. It's like a touch of a button. You can go from commuter mode into all action mountain bike mode. But guys, let's know your thoughts, or if you've got any questions for Pete, let us know in the comments down below. And we'll see you in the Northern Hemisphere mud. Okay folks, well it's now time to turn our attention to what's been going on in the pro world of e-mountain bikes. Matt Scott and his Specialized hardtail and a brace of very beautiful looking still chainsaws there. E-bikes and trail building, it goes hand in hand, right Chris?
It does, doesn't it? And I think, you know, I'm loving the fact he's riding a hardtail here. Can you imagine the weight of that chainsaw? If you had a full suspension bike, I think that rack would be buzzing the whole way down. But it's looking, you know, Matt's been busy out on the trails, building some cool stuff. That's really good to see, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, two chainsaws. Obviously, he's doing some serious trail building, and you've got the chain oil, you've got the petrol. I mean, there's lots of other kit to take with you. Plus, of course, your protective gear and your helmet and your trousers and your boots to go with that. So
I'd like to see Ray get busy with a chainsaw, Steve. Maybe you could get one of those, run into the back wheel.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, moving slightly south to California, Brian Lopes in Laguna Beach. Lopes, I think, is still living in Laguna, last time I heard, obviously with his neighbour, Hans Ray. This is a very tech-looking climb. It's great to see you on these e-bike slopes out in California. Now, obviously, this is a man who has been successful at downhill, but most of all at BMX and 4-cross, a multiple world champion, a very, very fit human being riding e-bikes and really pushing them to the limits. Lopes, it's great seeing you having some good times out there on your e-bike, and interesting to see that Yamaha bike, Chris, as well.
Definitely, it looks cool, doesn't it? You imagine that power, Lopes and an e-bike combined, you're mind-blowing.
A deadly combination.
And talking of a deadly combination, we see Yannick Graneri here on his high bike hitting that monster wall ride over that door, and it looks absolutely insane. There's some big crashes here from Yannick and one of his friends as well. It just shows that those pro riders can definitely have some big crashes to get those clips, or even Instagram. You know, look at Yannick. Just shows that high bike can take the hits too.
Now, Chris, I know that earlier in the year you planned a visit to go and see Yannick.
We did, yeah.
Hopefully you and Yannick will be able to get together to do some more sort of free ride related riding. Do you reckon you'll hit that wall ride?
Yeah, it's actually on the list. I talked to Yannick before we left, you know, for that trip, and he had that spot locked down for us, ready to go and hit. But unfortunately, yeah, COVID and all the stuff that's going on in the world at the minute has taken over from that. But as you mentioned, we will be back, and we'll definitely be hitting that one up.
I know it's been a busy period, Christmas and all that, but don't forget we still have the EMBN shop open for t-shirts, hoodies, stickers. What else we got, Chris? Team shorts.
We got masks, masks. We've even got masks in there, team shorts, jumpers, hoodies, you name it, is all in the EMBN shop, and it's a great way of supporting us here on the channel, making you that content. As always, we've got a great week of content coming up here on EMBN, and kicking things off on Friday is the 104 Roundup, where we've got all those e-bike motors, putting them all head to head up the hill, and this is the big conclusion. What have you got to say about that one, Steve?
The 104 has really been an interesting feature. It's often been a little bit controversial because people are very precious about their motors, but what I want to remind everyone, it was actually one hill over several days in the same conditions with the same rider, and we did have the average time from each motor going up the hill. It wasn't just a one-off hit. As I said, it's been a bit controversial on times, no more so than on the latest TQ motor. A lot of people did think that the 120 Newton meter bike would take the fastest time, but there's a lot of other detail that goes into this climb, such as the technical sections. There's some very key parts of the climb which have an impact actually on the overall time. So too does the rider, and we'll be going on to some questions related to that in a minute. But we've got a roundup, and what I will finally say is that, you know, it was one hill and all the motors. On another hill, on another day, it might yield different results. But moving from hill climbs to something more gravity based, and Chris has met up with Matt Jones and Veronique Sandler at the end of last year up at Revolution Bike Park. Two incredibly good riders, well, three incredibly good riders, you put it that way. And yeah, a really cool video. Two fantastic people who are, yeah, it's great to see them involved in e-mountain biking, and that's coming up on the channel on Sunday. And then on Monday, we're moving to a more product-related video, and this time we're looking at 3 e-mountain bike DIY builds for under 500 quid. Time now for comments and questions. Now, folks, Chris, I think this time round, lockdown has been quite difficult. We're in the middle of winter. You know, last time we were in lockdown, we were coming out of the winter. But guys, we love your feedback and your comments on our videos. But I will say is, like I said, it has been tougher this time around. But so don't be scared to get stuck in and get things off your chest, because it's all good, right, Chris?
Yeah, definitely. Love to hear those comments. So don't forget to get involved. Love to hear it.
Starting things off, we've got Mark Millett, Chris.
He says, great content as usual, but I find myself always asking the same question. How much battery did you use for each run? The info is available, so please share it.
Yes, now this is written in relation to the Levo SL versus Kenevo video. Now, Mark, yes, it's a great question. We've actually been doing this not only on the 700 watt hour Kenevo and Levo versus the smaller battery on the Levo SL. We've also done it on the EP8 versus the EP8 RS. 630 watt hours plays 320, or was that 360? It's a really, really interesting question, and I actually don't want to give anything away, because we've got this video coming up on the channel very soon, and it's actually in relation to the second question here from Craig Morton, which says, great video as usual, but how many laps could you do on both bikes? That is the real world test that is more relevant to most of us. So yes, Craig and Matt, we've got Craig and Mark, we've got a video coming up very soon. And also Jonathan as well, great vid, Steve, but the main question for me is, which bike do you enjoy riding the most? Which was the most fun? Chris, you've ridden both bikes.
Yeah, I think it's a different feeling, isn't it, for both of those bikes. Obviously the Kenevo is great for smashing downhills and hitting big jumps and things like that. But again, it's still good enough for riding cross country. You know, I've ridden some big cross country rides on that bike. It is a pretty much an all-rounder. Then you've got the SL, which again is a lighter bike, which in turn I think is a little bit more nimble on the trail. It's definitely at slower speeds than the e-bike, but it doesn't smash through that tech terrain as much as the Kenevo. So it kind of depends what sort of mood you're in and what style of riding you want to do. I think if I just want to go out for a basic cross-country ride and feel like I'm getting a big workout, I think I take the SL, you know, and enjoy that ride. But if I'm going to be smashing bike park laps or doing big stuff, then obviously the Kenevo is going to be the one for me. But both good fun, just totally different bikes.
Yeah, I think that sums it perfectly, actually, Chris. Yeah, I will sort of re-emphasize what Chris said there. I think if you're getting into very technical, gravity, steep terrain, that 180mm Kenevo is a class apart from bikes such as the SL or the Levo, which are actually more sort of trail and enduro orientated. So yeah, when it comes to fun, guys, it's like Chris says there, it's pretty much down to the trail you ride. Moving on now to a video came out earlier in the week relating to how to find the correct size e-mountain bike for you. Now, this is an incredibly difficult question to answer, simply because all brands have got their own interpretation when it comes down to sizing. Now, this is a question from Stuart Giles. Stuart Giles, Gilly, sorry. Hi, I've recently put a deposit down on a medium focus jam, squared 6.9. I'm approximately 5'8" with a 30-inch leg. I used the manufacturer guide for fitting, which I think is great. Would this be a good size for me? Yes, Stuart, I think most manufacturers do have them correct, but I think what is really key to this comment is that Stuart says, this is my first eMTB and first new bike for 12 years. Now, what's important here is that time scale, because a medium bike 10 or 12 years ago was a very different dimension to a medium-sized bike in 2021, and you've got to bear that in mind, because bikes have changed their sizes considerably. So you might have adapted to your bike previously. So when you get on a modern bike, they are very, very different to bikes from 10 years ago. So adaptation plays a huge part when it comes down to bike size.
Right, it's time for Sends of the Week, and we've got some great entries in this week. We've got quite a few videos, and first up we've got Paul here with a super steep climb on his YT decoy out in New Mexico. That looks nice. It looks a sharp but grippy climb. Perfect combination for e-bikes. Next up, we've got Kirk here, and it looks like he's having a little bit of trouble getting into his garden after a big ride. Captured this on his own CCTV. Look at that, clipping the pedal over the handlebars into your own garden, imagine that. And last up, we've got Simon here on his Cube Reaction Pro up in Staffordshire, sending it down this big stair set for his 7-year-old daughter after getting talked into it after watching Sam Pilgrim. Nice, and that could get you into a bit of problems there. I think I've done a few things, satisfying my kids, saying jump off that wall, Dad, and send it into here. So just go steady with that one.
Well, it is time for Out and About, or where you've been over the last few weeks, and as ever, some fantastic photographs in from you guys. And we're going to start things off with a lovely snow pic here from Mihai. Now, Mihai rides a high bike S-Duro full 9 8.0 out in Romania, Piatra Craiuliu Mountains. Now, would love for Steve to try and say the names of the awesome places the pictures are from. Saua Joaca, Poiana Grind. We got to go there, haven't we?
Piano Grinds, yeah.
And also the Kermatura Groapi.
I think you...
Mihai, are these real places? I hope they are, and I hope I'm not really stitching myself up here.
I think you practiced those, Steve. That was pretty good.
Now, secondly, this is a gaggle of e-bikes here, 6 in total. This is Thomas with a Focus Jam Squid 618, a Scott E-Ride 940, and a bunch of cubes. Now, they're out riding and exploring in the Black Mountains in South Wales. This is a place which is close to me. Thomas looks fantastic.
Does look good,
and I'm very
it?
jealous because I need to get over the border sometime soon.
Definitely.
What else we got, Chris, in Out and About this week?
We've got Chris making a huge wave here, and I hope you got that photographer wet with this shot. It looks really cool, nice action pic. He's on a Specialized Levo comp out on the North Yorkshire moors. He says, out on an early winter day on the moors, came across a stream crossing, and well, it would be rude not to. And that is a cool thing, isn't it? Splashing through those big fords, getting the water going everywhere. And last,
not too deep though.
No, exactly. You want to keep that motor dry. And lastly, it looks like we've got Domenico here. He's chasing pots of gold with this great shot. He's on a YT decoy with his friends on Intense Taser, Bulls E-Stream, and a Specialized Turbo Levo 2. They're riding the Pinions Pines out in Palm Springs, California. Been descending for quite a few miles and chasing those rainbows. Well, I hope you found that pot of gold at the end. Looks like a great ride.
And now time for the Bike Vault. Last time I was in the Bike Vault, we had a request that we were a bit more critical on your photographs. At the same time, we did have some comments that maybe we were too critical and we should chill out a little. But let's continue in the slightly critical vein, and we're going to kick things off with a cube reaction here from Flip. Is it Flip? My glasses on. It is Flip, out in the Peak District near Chesterfield. I think it sums things up very nicely. It's I think it looks like a good angle for that bike. I love the mud. You don't actually get that many shots of bikes in the mud in the Bike Vault, like as quite as deep as that, Chris.
Yeah, it's pretty bogged down, isn't it? Showing that E-power, getting him through there. It's cool.
But I think it summarises a typical winter's day in the UK very well.
Definitely.
I'm going to go super nice with that.
Oh, nice. Super nice. Kicking it off. Next up, we got Jan here out in Cornwall, and I recognise that shot actually. That's where we shot some of the Cornwall exploration video. I think that's Wheelcoat's mine there. Out in Cornwall, quick coastal blast off to burn off the mince pies, and he's riding a Vitus E Summit 2019 model. And I think got to give that one a super nice too, Steve. What are you thinking on the shot?
Well, yeah, I think it's even though it goes against what I say about the sort of lines going through the down tube and the top tube of the bike. The fact that the mine is positioned, he's got the C in the composition, and the bike is bottom left. It's if maybe it stood up a bit, I don't know, it's not far off, Chris, is it?
It's not far off. That pedal, the crank combination, you know, maybe if you've got the little stick to balance a bike up rather than dropping that crank, I think that's also a bit of a distraction there. But I think it's got to be a super nice, right?
Super nice. Why not? Why not? Next up, Mick with a Felt 190 with a Bafang conversion. I can finally keep up with my daughters. Location here is Hicks Lodge in Leicestershire. It's beautiful. I think it could be even better, Mick, if you'd moved away from the waymark post and just got the road and the sunset in the shot. Definitely. So I think, well, I say sunset. Yeah, it's an after lunch ride, so it must be sunset, not sunrise. It's nice.
I think that's an important thing. An important thing you mentioned there, Steve, isn't it? I think whatever you prop your bike up with is probably one of the most key things in the photo. I think a lot of the guys actually use some clear posts to prop their bikes up, so you can't actually see them, and people shot them out in the catalogues and things like that. But as you mentioned, it is a key part of the photo.
But Ryan has absolutely nailed it. He has absolutely nailed this shot. This is a Cube Stereo Hybrid 160 in Norfolk. This is a classic example of a bike vault shot. He's even got a reflection in there. It's beautiful. It's 100% super nice shot. That is nice one, Ryan. Really appreciate the effort.
Definitely.
And this is a nice shot, Chris. I mean, I'd say this next one, Leo on his white E160 in Loch Muick in Scotland, it's probably more of an out and about shot than a bike vault.
Definitely.
But nevertheless, I think the white is definitely shows off its good angle from 3/4 from behind there. You've got no disturbance in the background. You've got a lovely lake. You've placed the bike just to the right of the lake there, which is great. You've got the trail going down into the distance. I mean, really inspiring.
The sky is super moody as well, isn't it? It's a real atmospheric shot.
It's a beautiful location. It's a beautiful shot. It is super nice.
And talking of propping things up, we don't often get too many cactuses here on EMBN, but this is William with his 2021 Yamaha Moro Pro out in the Valley of the Sun in Arizona. Getting out there for a big ride, loving his winter in southern Arizona. And I'd be loving that too. It's a good shot, that, Steve, isn't it?
Thoughts?
I think, I don't know, that the shadow coming in on the right-hand side is a bit of a distraction. I think if you cropped maybe that shot in tighter.
Imagine the bike would have been just on the dirt on the right-hand side there.
Yeah.
Or he just needed to prop the bike up to the right, and that is a killer shot.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely. So going with a nice for that one, I think. Next up, we've got Florian here out in Austria in Hockenegg on his Kenevo Comp 2020 model, enjoying the beautiful scenery. Again.
It's a shame, Chris. That tree is really distracting.
Yeah. Looks like a second seat post going on.
It's honestly, it is. Oh, yeah. If only you'd have put it the other side of that tree.
Yeah, it'd have been super nice, wouldn't it? But
I mean, that is super critical, right? Super critical. But that's what you guys have requested us to be critical about your bike vault shots.
And next up, we've got Glenn here in Golden Bay in a not so sunny Malta. He's riding a Scott Spark E-Ride out for a Saturday morning blast, alleviating some stress and not catching that much sun. But it looks like you've got a bit of mud this time.
In Malta.
Definitely.
Muddy Malta.
I think it's a nice shot. That rock, for me, is, again, distracting from the photo, kind of filling that triangle in of the bike. And I don't know. What do you think, Steve?
I think we're going to leave it at nice and move on to Resolven in North Wales. Resolven, a place which is very close to my heart. I love the mist. I love the location. It's a shame that it's shot a little bit from. It's not. Oh, crikey! I'm torn. I'm torn on this one. I'm torn on this one.
Just give it a super nice. Don't be so harsh.
Jamie, I think. Yeah, do you know, Jamie? I think we need to meet up for a ride and reshoot that. I just feel it could be, but the problem is you've got to seize the moment, and Jamie has seized the moment here with that mist, and because of that, Jamie, I'm going to give it a super nice.
Nice. And the last bike of this week's Bike Vault is belonging to Carlos. He's out in Brazil riding a Sense Impulse E-Trail Evo. First ride on the Shimano E8000 powered bike. Absolutely loving it and enjoying the show too. I think that is a shot. I think it's great that we see a big scene going on in Brazil as well, isn't it? Got loads of viewers all over the world. I think we're going to give that one. I think the lighting could be a little bit better on the back wheel.
Oh,
but
critical.
I'm going to end it on a super nice for you, Carlos.
Okay, fantastic. Chris, I think there's two standout photographs in this week's Bike Vault. I think the Cube and the white up in Scotland are big contenders for the Bike of the Week. I almost think it's a tie. I mean, you've got the inspiration of the white bike, you've got the clinical composition of the Cube with the reflection in the water. I think it's a tie. So that's it for this week's show. Thanks for joining us. Please get involved in the comments, and if you've got any questions surrounding the Shimano EP8, please do get involved. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I know it's this lockdown is a little bit more tricky than last time. Many of us have got cabin fever. Certainly I have. Chris, what about yourself?
Yeah, feeling it a bit different this time. It's definitely been a hard few months, hasn't it? But I'm sure we're going to get through it. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed today's vid. As Steve mentioned, get involved in the comments box down below. And if you've got any content, videos or pictures, use that upload service. The details for that are down below in the description. It could be you on next week's show.